Watch what's approaching, the supreme moment. Reality striking closer than it seems, don't it? Go ahead, it's for the taking if you want it. If not, the dream dies and you'll be forever haunted. Then confront it.
Hey, what's good? Hopefully everyone's doing pretty well on this Monday. It looks like the new season for Battlefield is available now, and it is themed around the androids as part of the 300 million download celebration special version. So let's run through this and see how it is. I did keep most of the team setups how they were in the previous season, so you'll note, and I'll probably make a note of this, that there are a couple of units that I could have easily replaced with someone else, but in the prior setup for certain types against certain types of enemies, I included certain units that had the stunning ability or sealing SA, stuff like that. So there were one or two units that were previously set up that I thought, I should have went ahead and made adjustments for it. But for the most part, it is pretty fluid and straightforward. I honestly think it was definitely easier than the past two, where you're fighting against enemies like Jiren and stuff like that. So it felt like it was definitely a little bit easier than it previously has been. But given that information, it's still, you do have to watch out for things here and there, especially with certain types of enemies. So this is the first battle. Pretty much all you have to do is take a strength type. The overall damage capacity on the enemy really isn't too bad. So as long as you bring in a decent enough team, you should be okay. And the way I like to separate these out is I like to have a super type and an extreme type for each of these types. So basically for any agility, tech, strength, physical, or intelligence type units, I do like to break it out into super and extreme type teams. That way you get two different variations for each setting, and it definitely does help in terms of planning in advance. For the most part, I did keep some of the better units toward the latter parts of the events, but it can be, honestly, it can be interchanged. It's depending on how your comfort level is. So the reason why I like to bring super and extreme type variations is because you can build the best out of each and then interchange them according to how the enemies end up being. So for this one, this is one of my better extreme tech team, so I just went ahead and used that setup because I'm reserving the super tech team for the later parts of battle. And I believe that one was Android 18, and that was one of the trickier ones because you do want to make sure you bring in a unit that does seal SA. Otherwise, she ends up applying some pretty decent damage with the super attack, so that's probably one of the areas that you definitely want to be wary of. Now, for the most part, it's just a matter of getting the HP levels down on every single one of these enemies, at the same time minimizing attacks received. The first two, battles really aren't too bad. As long as you bring in a decent team, you're really not going to struggle that much. And from what I understand, the only restriction this guy has is the immunity to being stunned. So you could certainly bring in SA stealing units if you end up taking way too much damage. In my case, it wasn't really that necessary, so I just ended up, using the better units in the game. So there tended to be a problem with this one when I was running through with the rotations. It seemed like the links between the units on the team weren't that great based on the rotations. So it did kind of drag out a little bit, but it wasn't that bad overall. So that's probably the takeaway for this one. And when it comes to this, it's really about trying to get through it as fast as possible without making any mistakes. But as all of you know, mistakes do definitely happen, regardless of how perfect you try to run through this, especially when you try to speed through it. You tend to kind of rush through things, decision making a little bit, and that can lead to potential errors. Hopefully, I don't know, I haven't noticed this, but regarding prior Battlefield enemies, like where they had Great Saiyaman do the ultimate attack where they could essentially KO your team if you don't have like a very good tank. I don't know, I haven't noticed any enemy like that on this one. Maybe it's just because I by default had a SA sealing unit already on the team, or that type of enemy doesn't exist. I'm not 100% on. I didn't really do enough research on it. I just kind of hopped in, went right in, and then see how quickly I could get through it. So looks like this is the first boss for the first stage, Android 13 unit. From what I saw, looks like damage reducing capabilities and immunity to stun, I think. Kind of went through a little bit fast, so I wasn't able to capture everything. But again, as long as you bring in some decent setups, you should be fine. Now, this is one of those teams that I had, set previously in the prior season of Battlefield, and looking back on it now, I think I definitely could have made some variations on it to where I could have brought in some better units. But this team definitely does work well enough to where you really don't have to worry about it. I really do love the EZA Legendary Super Saiyan Broly. He really became a good unit with that Extreme Z Awaken. So any global players watching right now, this guy does become very good after that Extreme Z Awakening. The additional attacks, built-in ability to increase chances of criticals based on the amount of turns, ability to stack attack and defense based on every super attack. It really did end up being a very good unit. It's actually one of my favorite new units in the game in terms of upgrades that units have received. I think they definitely did a good job with that guy. And of course, we got units like Cooler with ability for multiple attacks, and then Super Saiyan Broly as well. Kid Buu, obviously a very good supporting unit that provides that 50% toward attack and defense as long as HP is 80% or above. Even with that HP going below 80%, you still get a 30% now with that EZA. So definitely very helpful unit to have, especially in a setting like this. If you're maintaining HP levels over 80% or above, he does also provide a key boost as well. So that definitely does help out a lot, especially if you run into key link issues on certain teams you run. By the way, I only brought in, I think it was 70 total units. Total-wise, just to have enough for each battle. I kind of like to set this up this way, just because I know exactly who I want to run on what team. So if I end up bringing in too many units, I tend to have to cipher through the units on each type and just kind of decide where to go. When I keep it at just 70, it helps me know exactly what teams I want to run, because I typically break them out between super types and extreme types. So I filter essentially by extreme or super, and then the type, and then it's just right down to there. I can choose immediately who I want to run. So as long as you set up your teams in a pretty efficient manner, you should be okay. Again, you can definitely take as many units as you want. Better to be safe than sorry. So I don't know. I get kind of tunnel vision sometimes, and I'm kind of OCD about certain things. So maybe that's what that is. I ended up not bringing in the Kid Buu on this one because simply from a key link standpoint amongst the team, I did at least bring in the Buhan unit. Does provide some pretty decent support as part of the passive skill sets, but I think it was okay for Kid Buu to be replaced by the LR Perfect Cell, because he does provide that 120% boost to extreme intelligence types as the secondary passive, along with the Android Cell Saga leader skill. So I really didn't think it was 100% necessary to bring Kid Buu, and just decided to omit him out of this one. And it worked out pretty decent. I think for the most part, these guys were able to link a lot better than it previously was set up. I know in the past season where I would have Kid Buu on there, units would kind of have a little bit of a struggle to getting that super attack off, you know what I mean? So I had to sacrifice units here and there to get the super attack, but in this case it worked out pretty well. Alright, so now moving on to the Strength Android 18, looks like a couple of variation skill sets, but as long as you bring in some decent units, you'll be fine. We'll find out here in a second what immunities this unit does have. I kind of looked through it, but it kind of went by a little bit fast. So I guess immunity to being stunned, I guess, is another one. Defense decrease, I think, is another one. So outside of that, you can certainly still SA, bring in a unit that does that. I bring pretty much an extreme agility type team where the primary leader is LR Baby, that provides artificial life forms, the 130%, and then the secondary is obviously the extreme agility types get 100% boost, and then for the second leader, I just basically use Metacooler because of providing that 90% boost overall. So I think it was a well enough balance to where they should be able to apply decent enough damage to where they'd be more than fine. You know what I mean? So I could have brought in different units like Super 17 as a leader and get the full 120%, but in this case, a lot of these guys do have a lot of dupe pass unlocked with a lot of investment toward the potential system. So I figure it was better off sacrificing 30% from a leader skill just to be able to bring in better units. So that's kind of what the thought process was with this team. Of course, like I said, you're not getting the full boost like you would on some other settings, but as long as they're good enough to beat the enemy, that's the way I look at it. And these guys carried themselves more than enough to where it wasn't really a problem. So I think we're into the boss of the stage 2. It was the first form cell unit. In terms of restrictions, looks like damage reduction, stunning, I guess sealing SA as well. So a couple of definitely restrictions there, but for this one, it's 120% lead with the Super Saiyan 3 Gotex, and then the 100% for the LR Bardock unit. So overall, these guys will do just fine. And I will break the link here between Trunks and Gotex. Technically, I probably would have been fine if I didn't, but Bardock definitely does defend a little bit better, so I kind of wanted him to be in the second slot, just to be on the cautious side. Like I said, it probably wasn't necessary, and it probably would have helped Trunks being able to get potentially the AT key super, but you know, it's whatever. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. I have been using LR Bardock a lot lately on a couple of variations of teams, and it's largely due to the fact that I was able to unlock a couple of Duke Pass with him, so it definitely does help in terms of functionality of a unit. But I do love that unit a lot. He's definitely a good unit for sure. Alright, so we do have a lot of attacks coming up first, so of course we want to put Super Vegito there. Ideally, it would have been nice to be able to give the Easy 8 Trunks the first super attack, that way he does boost everybody else's attack, but in this sense, you know, it only makes sense to put Vegito in front, you know, where the counters are coming up. And then Kefla, I'm not even sure if she'll have a chance to attack here based on how things are looking right now. She was able to get a lot of the physical type key spheres, so I know her, you know, attack stats are up there, but it's probably not even needed. Which is definitely a good problem to have. Don't get me wrong. Alright, so 1.6, 1.7 million with the Easy 8 Trunks. You know, him and the Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta unit, after the Extreme Z Awakenings, they became very good units. I do use them a lot on the, you know, variations of teams, and I find them quite useful. They're kind of like almost for me like I wouldn't say requirement, but I do prefer to include them on a team just because they do provide some very good, decent support, and they're actually pretty good units themselves. So, all right, so this is going to be the Super Strength type Android 16. I guess with yeah. Well, I mean, I guess with the artwork, that one was the Extreme Strength, right? Because the original artwork for that one's the Extreme Intelligence, I think. So whatever, it doesn't really matter with the typing anyhow, unless you bring in units that have certain conditions where it only applies to Super or Extreme types. But in this case, nobody really represents that. And I find it kind of ironic that the LR Gohan is pretty much attacking 16 here when he was the pretty much main driver for his ability to awaken into Super Saiyan 2. But, you know, that's trivial information, not really that important. Overall, again, it just seems like this season of Battlefield is a little bit easier than it has been in the past at least 2 seasons, and I don't know. I don't know the reasonings behind that, but it's definitely a good thing. I'm not complaining or anything, so definitely don't get that twisted. I don't want it difficult just for it to be difficult. You know what I mean? I want to run through this as quickly as possible. I don't want to treat it like it's some sort of, task or difficult objective. This is a matter of just getting through the first 3 times clearing and fulfill all the mission requirements, and that's pretty much it. That's the only thing I look at it as. It's a good way to get battlefield medals, and that's pretty much really the only reason why I even go through these. Outside of the other mission rewards you get, you do get a pretty decent amount of dragon stones out of that too. So, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily enjoy running through this, but at the same time, I don't treat it like it's a chore or anything. I run through it a couple times, just to get enough for the three times clear on each stage to get the all the rewards, and that's pretty much it. So we'll put Gohan in the second slot. Maybe he'll have a chance to finish off things here, but the Super Saiyan 3 Goku, obviously, well, yeah, there he goes with the additional attack. This guy's still pretty good overall. I mean, I still use him on a couple of variations team. He's not like, the starting 11 every time or anything, but he's definitely still very useful and a very good powerhouse to have. Alright, so we'll move on to Android 17, defense down, restriction, what was the other one? I think it was like stunning and something else. Again, I kind of blasted through this when I was recording, so I didn't give myself enough time to be able to read it fully when I was layering in the commentary. But of course, this is one of those cases. So you see the Gotenks and Ghost unit. That was only included because in the last season there was a unit that was heavily dependent on where the enemy needed to get stunned. I can't remember who that was, but that's really the only reason this guy's even on here. I forgot to replace this guy with some other better units, but at this point I was like, screw it. It's whatever. It'll be fine, and that's pretty much it. But it definitely would have been better to bring in a much better unit to replace those guys, since you can't even stun Android 17 on this one anyway, I don't think. Let me check, actually. Yeah, he's immune to being stunned, so it's pretty much worthless outside of maybe, recovering HP and key change. That's probably the only benefit that unit would bring, but outside of that, it's not really that important. So in this one, I did go ahead and put in LR Goku in the first slot just to provide a decent boost to the rest of the team. By doing that, though, LR Gohan wasn't able to get the 18 key super, so it's kind of like I prioritized something but had to compromise something else. It's one of those situations where honestly it probably would have been better to allow for LR Gohan to get the 18 key. I think things in terms of damage output, it would have been a lot more efficient to do it that way versus just LR Goku being able to get the 18 key. But it's at this point, 17's not really providing that much in damage and harm to the team overall, so I wasn't really worried about it at this point, honestly. And really, we'll be finishing things off in this turn anyhow. So the reason why I put the Gogeta up front in the first slot is I actually gave this guy levels toward evasion. This is one of the few units that I actually give potential levels toward dodge or evasion. The way I have this guy set up is level 12 additional attack and level 14 evasion, I believe, because honestly, for me, it just makes sense. Yes, I'm missing out on criticals, but at the same time, he effectively attacks against all types, so I figured it'd be better overall, balance-wise, just to give the unit additional attacks and evasion. Now, this is definitely the one that did catch me a little bit off guard in the first run, so I did make sure to bring in a unit that's sealed SA, because when I was running through this the first time around, Android 18 actually did quite a bit of damage with the super attacks, and it definitely did hurt. It actually dropped the HP levels down quite a bit, so in this case it's better to just go ahead and bring in a unit that does seal SA, where you don't have to really worry about it. I did have to sacrifice the super attack for Super Saiyan 3 Angel Goku, but I figured it'd be better off just giving it to Blue Vegeta. With the EZA, Vegeta can actually hit for a pretty decent amount, so it's give or take. It doesn't really matter as much who took it, but I think in this sense, Vegeta had better defense against the incoming attack, so that's kind of why things were set up the way they were. Not that it would have been that detrimental, but I tend to take the cautious route, so that's probably really the only reason why I put Vegeta in the third slot and ended up giving him the ability to get the super attack. So this rotation right here, there really isn't. The guys on here they didn't link as well, so it's one of those situations where like I need Bardock to seal just in case, but can Vegeta Blue do enough damage to where it doesn't even matter? So I ended up taking the gamble here and sacrifice Trunks from being able to get a super attack in order for the rest of the units to get their super attacks. That way, if Vegeta Blue does enough damage but doesn't KO 18, at least Bardock's able to seal the SA. You know what I mean? So you don't really have much to worry about at that point. And I guess he just had enough, barely enough to finish off. Well, I wouldn't say barely enough, but 18 had just a little bit of HP to where she survived the Vegeta Blue attacks, but it didn't really matter. Okay, so I think this is the last one against Cell. It was a physical type, I believe. And in terms of restrictions, it was damage reduction, stunning, sealing SA, attack and defense down. Immunity, stuff like that. So it definitely did come with some restrictions. I think the last one was Cell has the ability to recover HP as well, so that can be a little bit of a nuisance sometimes, but as long as you keep applying good damage against them, you'll be alright. That's the way I look at it. And in terms of teams, pretty much, LR Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta leader. Secondary leader was the Super Saiyan 4 Goku, just providing 120% across the board, and then 170% attack toward the Vegeta family units. So it really, it's fine. I did prefer to bring in B-Pen here because of the damage mitigation, but also the ability to recover HP. Adds a little bit extra security levels in terms of not risking the team to have their HP lowered too much, and she's actually able to defend pretty well too. 55% damage reduction is very helpful to have, especially when you're in settings where you can't use items. It definitely does make sense to bring in a unit like that. Of course, Vegeta does have the ability, when the passive activates, to effectively guard against all types. That's also a benefit to have. He also does have the ability to raise attack based on, or greatly raise attack based on every super attack, so that can definitely make things a little bit easier as well. Not saying that for a short battle like this is as beneficial, but with every attack you could definitely get some benefits out of it. So Vegeta Blue definitely does have the better defense out of the group here, even though Super Saiyan 4 Goku can counter super attacks. In this sense, it just made the ideal thing was to just put Vegeta Blue up front. And we'll see how much damage he takes here with the super. Yeah, 76,000, that's not too bad. And Goku definitely would have taken a lot more damage than Vegeta Blue did. So I think overall it just works out well, going about it that way. I definitely do swap between the LR Vegeta Blue and the Tech Vegeta Blue. I do like both units, and depending on which teams I'm using, I do alternate between the two. LR Vegeta Blue's been out for quite some time, but he's still a very good unit. I love him a lot. Alright, so pretty much halfway there. It looks like 5 HP, a little bit over. Yeah, I'd say like 4 and a bit of HP bars left over. Of course, we'll go ahead and put B-pen in the first slot. I decided not to use the active skill on her just yet, just in case like there was another rotation where she came back around. Maybe the key available on the map would have been a little bit better to where they would have gotten a little bit more. Like for example, Vegeta was able to get the 18 key super versus a 12. I figured there was enough of a safety net to where I didn't have to worry about the team being eliminated. Pretty much full HP, so I didn't really have to worry about too much. So I was like, I'll just reserve it for the next one if she ends up showing back up. And it worked out well because I put Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta in the third slot and Cell ended up supering on that one, so it worked out well. Honestly, I probably should have put Vegeta in the first slot here and just kept the link with the Vegeta Blue, but like I say, it's really not that critical. It's not like a battle-changing decision or anything. It's one of those things like looking back on in the hindsight you kind of think about, but that's pretty much the extent of it. I mean, these guys are going to be able to hit for a lot, so Cell just had barely enough. I mean, he just survived the inevitable 3 seconds that he was able to prolong his life, but whatever. I know this is typically a longer video than what I usually do, but I wanted to include the full run of the second attempt at Battlefield. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Again, this isn't really meant to be like a tutorial or anything, just kind of show you what I went through, and that's pretty much it. Just kind of show my team builds or whatever. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and as always, I do appreciate you watching, and definitely stay tuned for the next one. I think I have another video scheduled later today, so definitely check that out. I'll let you guys know. Alright, I'll check you guys out later. Peace out.